When did humans first develop imagination? That question sounds simple, but it's not. There's no fossilized imagination. There isn't a single bone you can point to and say, here, this is where it started. Imagination is an internal experience. It's the ability to see what isn't there, to plan for a future that hasn't happened, to tell a story about a past you only heard about. It's the engine of everything we do. So how do we find the ghost in the machine? How do we find the first spark of this thing that makes us who we are? We have to look for its shadows. We have to look at the things our ancestors left behind: tools, bones, traces of fire. Art. These are the footprints of imagination. They tell a story of a mind slowly waking up to its own power. The story doesn't have a clear beginning. It wasn't a switch that flipped. It was a slow, gradual dawn that took millions of years. Let's start at the beginning, or as close as we can get. Go back about 2.6 million years. We aren't even Homo sapiens yet. We are an earlier ancestor, maybe Homo habilis, the handyman. And we find the first stone tools. They are called Oldowan tools. They are simple. A lump of rock, a cobble, with a few flakes knocked off one side to create a sharp edge. Is this imagination? Look closer. To make that tool, you have to do something remarkable. You have to look at a round, dull rock and see a sharp-edged knife inside it. You have to understand that one object can be turned into another, more useful object. You have to plan. You have to think, I need to cut meat off this carcass. This rock is dull. But if I hit it with this other rock just right, I can create a sharp edge. Then I can cut the meat. That chain of thought is a form of imagination. It's not about dragons or spirits. It's a practical, grounded kind of imagination. It's prospection, the ability to think ahead and act on a future need. An ape might use a stick to get termites, but it finds the stick when it needs it. Our ancestor picked up a rock knowing it would become a tool later. They carried good tool-making rocks with them. They were preparing for a future they could mentally simulate. This is the first flicker. A seed. It's simple, but the gap between seeing a rock as just a rock and seeing it as a potential tool is immense. It's the first step out of the immediate present. For a very long time, this was it. Simple, functional tools. But then, around 1.7 million years ago, a new character enters the scene. Homo erectus. And with them comes a new kind of tool, a much more impressive one. The Acheulean hand axe. You've probably seen pictures of them. They are teardrop-shaped and symmetrical. They are worked on both sides, carefully flaked to be sharp all around the edge, leading to a point. They are beautiful, and they are a huge leap in imagination. Why? Because a simple Oldowan chopper is opportunistic. You just need a sharp edge, and you knock it off a rock. But a hand axe has a preconceived design. The toolmaker didn't just see a sharp edge in the rock, they saw a specific symmetrical teardrop shape. They had a mental template, they had to hold that ideal shape in their mind's eye for the entire time they were working on the stone. They had to plan dozens, sometimes hundreds of strikes. Each strike had to be precise. One bad hit could ruin the whole thing. They had to be able to rotate the stone in their mind to imagine what the other side would look like after they struck this side. This is a far more complex mental operation. It requires sustained focus and a clear mental image of a non-existent object. The hand axe is a physical manifestation of an idea, and here's the truly mind-bending part. We find these hand axes all over Africa, Asia, and Europe, and they stay almost exactly the same for over a million years. Our entire species, Homo sapiens, has only been around for about 300,000 years. Our recorded history is maybe 5,000 years old. These hominins maintained a single, complex design for a span of time we can barely comprehend. What does that tell us about their imagination? It tells us the mental template was so strong and so successful that it was passed down through generations. A young hominin learned how to make a hand axe by watching an elder. They weren't just copying the motions. They were learning the idea of the hand axe. They were sharing a mental concept. And imagination had become social. It was a shared blueprint for reality. Still, for all their beauty, hand axes were tools. Their purpose was practical. There's another kind of imagination, the one we usually think of. The one that deals with symbols, with meaning, with things that are not of the physical world. For that, we need to move forward in time, and we need to meet our famous cousins. The Neanderthals. Neanderthals have a bad reputation. We think of them as brutish cavemen. The evidence tells a different story. It tells of a mind grappling with something more than just survival. We find Neanderthal sites with lumps of ochre. Ochre is a natural pigment, a kind of iron-rich earth that can be red, yellow, or brown. We know they were grinding it up. What for? There's no practical survival-based reason to grind up colored rocks. The most likely answer is that they were using it as body paint, or to color animal skins. They were decorating themselves and their world. Why do you decorate something? You do it to give it meaning, to mark yourself as part of a group, to prepare for a ritual. To express an identity, decoration is a symbolic act. It requires imagination. You have to think, this red color means something. It represents strength, or our clan, or blood. You are imposing an abstract idea onto the physical world, and then there's how they treated their dead. At sites like Shannon Cave in Iraq, we find Neanderthals who were intentionally buried. One individual was laid to rest in a shallow grave, and pollen analysis suggests he may have been buried with flowers. The evidence is debated, but the intentional burial itself is a huge deal. Animals die and they are left where they fall. Neanderthals took the time and energy to dig a hole and place their dead inside. Why? Maybe it was just for sanitation. But it seems like more than that. Burial suggests respect for the deceased. It suggests that the person still matters even after they are dead. Does it imply a belief in an afterlife? We can't know, but to even conceive of that requires imagination. You have to imagine a spirit, or a soul, or a journey to another place. You have to imagine an existence beyond what you can see and touch. This is a monumental, imaginative leap. It's the beginning of religion, of spirituality. We also find eagle talons from a Neanderthal site in Croatia, about 130,000 years old. They have cut marks and polishing on them that show they were worn as jewelry, perhaps a necklace or a bracelet. This is not a tool, this is not for survival, this is personal adornment, it's about beauty. It's about self-expression, it's about saying, I am me. To turn a predator's claw into a symbol of personal identity requires a sophisticated, imaginative mind. So Neanderthals had a spark, they had symbolic thought, they had a sense of beauty. They cared for their dead. Their imagination was waking up to the abstract. But they were not alone. At the same time in Africa, our own species, Homo sapiens, was starting to leave even clearer footprints of the imagination. At Blombos Cave in South Africa, archaeologists found something incredible. They found pieces of ochre dating back 75,000 years. And these pieces were not just lumps. They were engraved with a deliberate geometric pattern, a cross-hatching of lines. It is the oldest known art in the world. It serves no practical purpose, it is pure design. It is a thought, an idea, made permanent on a piece of stone. In that same cave, they found small seashells, all of a similar size, with holes drilled in them. They were beads, a necklace. At 100,000 years old, this is some of the earliest evidence of jewelry. Like the Neanderthal eagle talons, this is about identity, but it's also about communication. Wearing a necklace of specific shells could tell other people who you were, what group you belonged to, your status. It was a shared symbol system, it was a language without words, and to create and understand such a system, everyone in the group has to share the same imagination. They all have to agree that these shells mean something more than just shells. This is where things start to accelerate. For hundreds of thousands of years, the changes were slow. A new tool here, a bit of pigment there, but starting around 50,000 years ago, something changes. Some call it the Great Leap Forward or the Upper Paleolithic Revolution. It's less of a revolution and more of a flowering. The seeds that had been slowly germinating for millennia suddenly burst into bloom. And the evidence is undeniable. Imagination is now running the show. This is the era of the great cave paintings in Europe. At places like Chauvet and Lascaux in France, our ancestors went deep into the dark, dangerous bellies of caves. With nothing but animal fat lamps for light, they painted the walls with breathtaking images of animals. Horses, bison, mammoths, lions. These are not simple stick figures. They are masterful works of art showing movement, perspective, and detail. But they are more than just pretty pictures. They tell us what was on the minds of these people. They were obsessed with the powerful, dangerous animals they shared the world with. But it's not just a field guide. The paintings seem to tell stories, a herd of horses running, a bison speared by a hunter. Sometimes, strange symbols are painted alongside them. Dots, lines, geometric shapes. We don't know what they mean, but they clearly meant something to the people who painted them. They were part of a larger story, a mythology, and this is where imagination truly takes flight. Because they didn't just paint what they saw, they painted what they imagined. The most famous example is from Germany. The Lowenmensch, or the Lion Man, from Hohenstein's Stadel Cave. It's a figurine carved from mammoth ivory, about 40,000 years old. It has the body of a human, but the head of a lion. This is a breakthrough. It is arguably the first undeniable proof of a fully modern imagination. Why? Because you can see a human, you can see a lion, but no one has ever seen a lion man. It does not exist in the physical world, it exists only in the mind. The artist had to take two separate concepts from reality, human, and lion and combine them in their head to create a new fictional being. This is the foundation of all mythology, all religion, all fiction. It's the ability to conceive of things that have never been. Gods, spirits, monsters, and heroes. This proves our ancestors were not just observing their world. They were creating new worlds inside their heads. They were asking, what if, in the most profound way. So why did this happen? Why the sudden explosion of art, music we find bone flutes from this period too, and complex tools? There are two main ideas. One is that there was a sudden genetic mutation around 50,000 years ago. A genius gene that rewired our brains and unlocked this creative potential all at once. It's a dramatic idea, but there isn't much evidence for it. The brains of Homo sapiens from 100,000 years ago look just like ours. The other idea, which seems more likely, is that it was a gradual process. The hardware, our brain, had been getting ready for a long time. The capacity for imagination was already there. What changed was the software. In culture, perhaps population density reached a point where more people were interacting, sharing ideas, and competing. This social pressure cooker could have sparked the need for more complex communication, for stronger group identities, for shared myths to hold people together. The imagination, which had been developing slowly, was suddenly put into overdrive by new social and environmental needs. The flowering was not the result of a new seed, but of the right soil and weather. And we can't talk about imagination without talking about its twin language. Language, like imagination, doesn't fossilize, but they are deeply connected. It's hard to imagine having complex, abstract thoughts without a language to structure them. How do you think about Leon Man without words for Leon and Mon, and a grammar that lets you combine them? How do you plan a complex hunt with others without the ability to talk about what will happen, what might happen, and what everyone should do? Language allows us to share our imagination. I can have an idea in my head, turn it into words, and transmit that idea into your head. You can then see what I see. This is the foundation of human cooperation. We are not the strongest or fastest animals. Our superpower is our ability to cooperate flexibly in large numbers, and we do that by believing in shared stories. Things like tribes, nations, gods, laws, and money. None of these things are physical realities. A country is just lines on a map that we all agree to believe in. Money is just paper or a number on a screen that we all agree has value. They are collective fictions, they are products of our shared imagination. This ability to create and believe in these imagined realities is what allows millions of strangers to cooperate and build cities, trade networks, and civilizations. The Lion Man was the beginning. It was a proof of concept that we could invent things that weren't real. From there, we invented gods to explain the rain and the stars. We invented kings to lead us. We invented laws to keep us in line. We invented stories to teach our children how to be good people. Our entire world is built on a foundation of imagination. So, when did we first develop it? There is no single date. It was a process, not an event. You can see the first glimmers 2.6 million years ago in the mind of a hominin who saw a knife inside a stone. This was the imagination of the possible, the ability to look at the world and see not just what it is, but what it could become. You can see it growing stronger 1.7 million years ago, in the mind of a Homo erectus who held a perfect symmetrical image of a hand axe in their mind and chipped away everything that wasn't it. This was the imagination of the ideal, the ability to conceive of a perfect form and impose it on the world. You can see it starting to grapple with the unknown, perhaps 130,000 years ago, in the mind of a Neanderthal who buried a friend with flowers or wore the talon of an eagle. This was the imagination of the symbolic, the ability to assign deeper meaning to objects and actions. And you can see it finally break free about 40,000 years ago, in the mind of an artist who went into a dark cave and carved a figure with the body of a man and the head of a lion. This was the imagination of the impossible, the ability to create entirely new realities. This is the story of our mind. It's the story of how we slowly learn to detach from the immediate reality in front of our eyes. We learn to live in the past, through memory and stories. We learn to live in the future, through planning and foresight. And we learn to live in worlds of our own making, through art, myth, and shared belief. Every time you plan your day, you are using the same skill that made the first stone tool. Every time you follow a blueprint or a recipe, you are using the same skill that made the Acheulean hand axe. Every time you wear something that makes you feel like yourself, you are tapping into the same impulse that led Neanderthals to wear eagle talons. And every time you read a novel, watch a movie, or believe in an idea that unites you with others, you are using the very same magic that created the Lion Man. The development of imagination was not just one chapter in the human story. It is the story itself. It's the thread that connects the first toolmaker to the last stargazer. It is our greatest inheritance and our most powerful tool. It's how we got here. And it's the only thing that can show us where we go next.